Welcome to The Breakdown, brought to you by PaintballAccess.com and sponsored by Dye, GI Empire, PB Nation, and Raza. So, I'm Matty Marshall alongside Todd Martinez, and the World Cup is coming up. PSP World Cup, the biggest tournament of the year. It's coming at you October 9th through the 12th. And we're going to set the stage here, give you the state of the Paintball Union heading into the biggest event, the last event of the year. Today, we're going to talk about the top 5 teams. And the first one out the gate, the team that's been the most consistent for the past 2 seasons, took second at the last event to a resurgent Art Chaos, is Edmonton Impact. Todd, what do you think about Edmonton Impact? Very impressive run the past 2 seasons. This year particularly, obviously finally getting that win that they wanted so bad, taking second place so often, but finally coming through with that victory and then taking second place at the last event. Chicago was the event that they won.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely stepped their game up this year. We talked about them in the beginning of the year with the players that they picked up. Rainey Stanzak has been huge for them. Nick Laval has been slowly getting better and better for that team. We haven't seen a whole lot of Danny Park, but they've really come together as a unit. And, maybe Rainey Stanzak was that piece that they really needed. With Josh Wimette, Zane and Zach Yakimek playing really well, and then, of course, Justin Rabakoff and Justin Cornell. They've been the most consistent team all year. That's why they're in first place in the overall rankings. That's why every time we go to an event, everybody's worried about what Edmonton Impact's doing, how they're playing the field. And, they're pretty much the most dangerous team out there right now as far as all-around game goes. So everybody's worried about them, and, they deserve to be in the position that they're in because they've played really solid paintball all year long.
Yeah, I do think that Rainey was a huge pickup for Edmonton Impact. He's such a consistent player. Their backfield is incredibly consistent, and you have to also say that I think a huge part of their success is the emergence of Zach Yakimek as such a dominant player. He's ranked, he's the #1 guy on the team. He's ranked 8th overall, and Zach is just playing so well. He's the MVP from Chicago, and Zach Yakimek has really emerged as a top flight player, not just on Impact, as he's the #1 guy in that team right now as far as the stats are concerned, but in the actual league itself. Dave Baines, who's played for pretty much everybody, says that Zach Yakimek is the most consistent player he's ever played with other than Ryan Greenspan. So that's some pretty lofty company to be in. And we'll talk about Dynasty in a little bit. But, man, Edmonton Impact, they took 6th in Dallas. They took 2nd at the Mid-Atlantic Open, priming for their win in Chicago. And then they took 2nd at the last event. You really got to say, obviously, because of how well they've done, that, yeah, I mean, are they the favorite for the last event for the World Cup? They took 2nd at the World Cup last year in a crazy game. If you haven't seen that World Cup game, definitely check out it on our YouTube channel, on Paintball Access's YouTube channel. But what an amazing game that was, where it looked like Impact was going to win, but then X Factor came back to take that comfort behind victory. So I think that even though Impact has had a ton of success this year, I still see the hunger in them. They play hungry. And like you said, Nick Laval, those younger guys on that team. Danny Park hasn't got a ton of spins this year, but they have the 2 Justins, Justin Cornell, Justin Rabakoff. And the top 5 guys on that team, as far as the stats are concerned, is Zach Yakimek 8th, Rainey Stanzik 21st, Nick Laval 25th, 26th, Justin Rabakoff, and then 27th, Josh Wimette. I mean, they're all neck and neck right there, which isn't surprising considering how well that they've done. And then also they are in the division with Damage, Vicious, 187, and Revo. So that should be a pretty interesting bracket. The other bracket is Art Chaos, Legion, the Ironmen, Heat, and X Factor. I think that first bracket, Todd, a little bit, at least on paper, a little bit stronger.
Well, I was just saying, this bracket, with Impact, Damage, Vicious is pretty similar to MAO. MAO, it was Impact, Damage, Vicious, X Factor, and Aftershock. And, that was actually turned out to be a pretty tough bracket. There was a lot of really close games. So, I mean, again, it's World Cup. Yes, Art Chaos definitely won the last event. We've been talking about them all year. Red Legion has gotten better and better as the year's gone on. The Ironmen has been a consistent, 4th, 5th, 6th all throughout the year. And then Houston Heat, who we saw come in and play really strong in Chicago, comes back and, barely, keeps their life out of the Challengers Division this last event. So, we know what Heat's capable of, and then X Factor looked really solid coming back into the Champions Division after playing really well and winning the Challengers Division at the West Coast Open.
Yeah, they dominated Aftershock in that semifinal Challengers Division matchup. Aftershock was, they were pretty excited to be in there with X Factor and really thought they were going to give them a game. I talked to a couple of guys before that, but Man, X Factor looked about as flawless as you could and just completely decimated Aftershock in that semifinal match to secure themselves the spot.
And then they beat Revo pretty good.
Yeah, then they beat up on Revo as well, too. So that's, it's World Cup, like you said, man. I mean, that's become the paintball cliche. Oh, it's World Cup. Yeah, hell yeah, it's World Cup, man. This is the tournament that everyone wants to win. You get to put that feather in your cap forever. And it's the biggest tournament and the most important tournament of the year for a reason. So, heading on to the second-ranked team this year, always in the hunt, always consistent, is Tampa Bay Damage. They took 7th in Dallas, 4th at Mid-Atlantic Open, 3rd in Chicago, and then 3rd at the West Coast Open. Nipping at everybody's heels, but they just can't find a way to get past the semifinals. They did win the West Coast Open in 2013. But there's just something's a little bit of something is missing as far as them getting past that semifinal matchup and getting back into the finals. But I thought they played some very inspired paintball at the last event.
Yeah,
they looked hungry.
They've ran into some really good teams on Sunday morning too. It's not like that they've coasted. They've played really solid paintball throughout the prelims these past couple events. MAO they took 4th. You said Chicago 3rd, West Coast Open 3rd. But I mean, all throughout the prelims, it seems like they're really they like how Dynasty plays really well at the beginning of the year and then seems to taper off sometimes. Damage is one of those teams that sometimes maybe they get, it takes a little bit of time to ramp up. And, we've seen them win World Cup themselves before. We know Damage, it's pretty much their home turf. They're playing 20 minutes from their home field, and Damage is, they're going to come hungry. We talk a lot about, but between ourselves about, the players that have been there and done that. Everybody on Damage has been there and done that. How much longer are these guys going to want to do it? You got a good, solid crew, been going for a long time. Damage, that they're going to come bring it at World Cup.
I think World Cup might be their tournament because they did come very close. Damage lost to Impact in the semifinals in a 2-3 game, which sent Impact into the finals again.
Yeah.
So that was a really close match. And when you look at Damage in the prelims, Damage went undefeated in the prelims. They beat Red Legion 7-3, they beat Heat 6-1, VCK 7-3, and then Vicious 6-4. I mean, those are pretty good wins. And then to go and just barely lose to Impact 2-3 in a low-scoring game, I think World Cup might be Damage's tournament. We'll see. I think that they did play some, they looked very hungry. I guess that's one of the things that's tough. Like I said, when we talk about it, it's like everyone knows Damage has a stellar lineup. Those guys are straight cold-blooded killers. But I think the fact that they are cold-blooded killers and they've been doing this for so long, maybe they could get a little bit hot-tempered about this. I mean, I think that's the missing piece.
Well, you know what, man? I'll tell you, even though Damage is sitting here in second place, I don't think Damage has played as good as they can play.
Which is scary.
I think that a lot of their guys, I think that they've done well because a lot of their guys have had good tournaments, but they haven't really played awesome as a team like we know Damage can play. And I think they know that too, because we've seen like Chad Bougere in Chicago, I thought had a great event. Daniel Holiday played really well out in Chicago. I don't think Daniel Holiday even made the first event. Jacob Edwards has been playing great all year. Jason Edwards is always consistent, but Brian Smith is another guy who's Mr. Consistency, and we haven't seen him really, really be like, he's been like on and off, no disrespect to Brian, but like I want to see all the Damage players play at the top of their game because when those guys are playing like that, then there's really nobody that can stop them.
Yeah, and you look at their top 5 guys, Jason Edwards, 28th overall, Chad Bougere, 30th, 35th, Brian Smith, Jacob Edwards, 40th, and then Ramzi Al-Yusuf clocking in at 60th. But the thing is that, yeah, I agree with you, Todd. I think Damage is going to get pretty frightful to play if they can get, at least 4 guys playing at their best. And we just haven't quite seen that yet. But they're doing so well, but that's the thing. When you have a team that's that deep, that experienced, that talented, and the thing is with World Cup is like it's Florida. You never know how hot it's going to be. You never know what type of weather, how humid it's going to be. They're not going to be fazed by any of that. This is, like you said, that's their home turf. They don't have to worry about adjusting to any sort of time disparity or any of that. I mean, they're going to be ready to roll. If you're not calling Damages, if you're not calling Damage as a favorite at World Cup, you definitely haven't been watching. I think they got a shot for sure. Let's head on to the 3rd-ranked team in the PSP right now. And what a crazy turn of events from the West Coast Open as San Diego Dynasty lost every single game. I see a whole lot of red on my sheet. They lost to Art Chaos 7-6. They lost to Impact 1-5. The Ironmen 5-7, 187, 2-3. And then they lost in that dreaded relegation game to Houston Heat 4-5. See a lot of 1-point scores there, Todd.
Yeah, but I mean, if you watch the tournament, I mean, they just had nothing going. They couldn't get no players were playing well. There was no team consistency. I mean, I saw some effort out of some guys, but that was just about it. You know, I mean, there was a few guys out there that were really giving it their all, but they just couldn't really seem to get anything going as a team. And, you know, West Coast Open was a tough tournament. You know, it was a really good field. You know, you had to hit your shots and make smart moves and stay alive. And, you know, their Dynasty just had nothing going. You know, and we've seen it. You know, we talked about it on the webcast. It's pretty much been since the second day of Chicago. They haven't won a game.
Yeah.
You know, 7 straight losses. 7 after winning every single game before that. 7 straight losses for San Diego Dynasty from Saturday of Chicago's prelim action all the way through the West Coast.
And they looked really good, yeah, and which is kind of a scary thing if you're Dynasty now heading into a situation where they're not going to be playing in the Champions Division for a World Cup. So, you know, maybe we're going to see them in that semifinal match to fight for the chance to play in the Champions Division again in 2014. But I'll tell you who I do, if I'm in the Challengers Division, who I don't want to play, I definitely don't want to play San Diego Dynasty. They know what's at stake. I was able to do a podcast with Blake Yarber, D-side player for, you know, one of the youngest players on that team as far as time spent, but great guy, very aggressive player on that D side, fun to watch. He had a bunch of crazy stories from his adventure this year traveling around the world, but he kind of, you know, he looked at it and he said, look, man, we didn't execute kind of all the things that you said. He basically, you know, said exactly the same things. And I'm talking to Ryan Greenspan about what happened to him is they did not diversify their game plans. They had, you know, as soon as they oh, this is like MAO. They won the Mid-Atlantic Open. So they were like, oh, this field's a lot like MAO. We won MAO. We should be doing well. And also, Glenn Takamoto and the former player for their team, Johnny Perchek, had back-to-back weddings, back-to-back weekends right before the tournament. And what were they going to do? Not go to those guys that they're best friends with and in their wedding, you know, so it was a tough circumstance for them. But now the challenge faces them is that they have to go into World Cup and they have to do well over there. And they're in a bracket with Los Angeles Infamous, Trenton Top Gun Union, Chattanooga CEP, and Sacramento Excessive. So that's going to be a very interesting bracket in the Challengers Division. But that's what I love about the league right now, man. Top to bottom, it's getting really cool. It's getting really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like a lot of these teams are getting better. Infamous, I mean, we've seen Infamous down in the Challengers bracket since after MAO, you know, and you know that they're hungry because they've had 2 pretty devastating losses, you know.
Devastating. That game against Revo, man.
The game against Revo, and then the game against Art Chaos after being up 4-0, loses to Art Chaos in Chicago. So, I mean, you know Infamous is going to want to get themselves out of that division over there. The other one, you got VCK, Shock, Boom Thunder, and Red Storm, and you know, you just never know. I mean, we saw Red Storm in Chicago play amazing, and they were dominating everybody, and then they came out and didn't play so well at West Coast Open. But the point is that, you know, these teams are very capable of playing some really solid paintball. So, well, I mean, it's no easy walk out of the Challengers Division.
Not anymore. Not anymore. And it's like you said, you know, it's one of those things where, we have different versions of this saying, but, you know, when you come to the tournament, don't bring your name, bring your game. And that, more than ever in paintball, is so blatantly apparent. You cannot have bad days out there because everybody's hungry, and these teams from, you know, top to bottom, the chance to challenge, just like I was saying, getting really tough. Before we move on to the 4th-ranked team, Los Angeles Ironmen, the top 5 players statistically heading into this last event, and we're not going to. So this is actually how it's going to end for them because, you know, don't take stats on the Challengers League field. But it's Ryan Greenspan, 9th overall, Brandon Short, Oliver Lang, Glenn Takamoto, and Yosh Rao, the top 5 players for San Diego Dynasty through 4 events. So let's move on to the 4th-ranked team, a team that I think is on the cusp of something. They just keep finishing middle of the pack, and they keep kicking themselves for it because they always present awesome opportunities for themselves. They create opportunities. They go up points on teams, and then they let it go, just somehow fumble it away. And it's the Los Angeles Ironmen. Los Angeles Ironmen ranked 4th overall, 5th in Dallas, 6th at MAO, 4th in Chicago, and then 5th again at the West Coast Open. So, you know, not having to play in those relegation games, but also not where they want to be. But, you know, I think they don't need to not be so hard on themselves. For their first year, putting that, you know, merging with Royalty, bringing a lot of those younger players over, trying to figure out with a huge roster who's going to start, who's going to play. It's kind of a tough thing. Or they got Shane Pastana back leading the charge. So I think, considering all things considered, not a bad year for the Ironmen, but they're not satisfied.
No, I mean, they're definitely not satisfied. I wouldn't be satisfied either because they came in and, you know, honestly, you look at the team that they put together, you know, you want to have high hopes and high aspirations for what your team can possibly do. I think that they've overachieved this year. You know, I think that, you know, they've done a really good job of getting better throughout the year, but I think they've been in or ahead, won a lot of games that maybe they shouldn't have, you know. But the frustrating part about that is that I feel like that they had every opportunity for all these 5ths and 6ths to be 3rds and 4ths. You know, like I was hoping that, like, you hope a team reaches their potential because they have good players and, like a good group and a good bond, and good leadership. But then you're also like, well, there's a lot of other good teams out there. And then you look at them and they beat those teams and they put themselves in a position to beat those teams, and then they lose. And it's like, you look at it and you're like, I see what mistakes that they made where they could have won those games. Did I expect them to be, a fifth, sixth, fourth, not even have to play a relegation game?
Every event.
No, I thought that, maybe they might be in a relegation game or two this year, but then you go to the tournaments and you watch them play and they play really well. You got to give it to Shane for never giving up his aggressive mentality on how he attacks it. But, I feel like they made, so many small mistakes this year that it's like, they could have been a top 4
But that's
team.
the youth and the inexperience.
Yeah.
That's when it starts rearing its ugly head. I've had many conversations with Marcelo about this, and and Marcelo Margot is doing phenomenal this year, as he has been for the past couple seasons. He ranked 7th overall, the top 5 players for the Ironman. Marcelo, Toe Camel, 46th, Alex Goldman, 56th overall, and then Alex Rodriguez and Brandon Cornell. Those are the 5 players that are leading the charge for the Ironman statistically this season. But the thing is they have a really deep roster. There's a lot of good players on the team, but I think that's one of the tough things for them is that they've tried to figure out where exactly are all these guys going to play? Who's going to play where? And I think that, you're talking about a team like Damage, you're talking about a team like Impact. These are much more developed teams in the sense that they know what everyone's specialty is, or at least what they're best at, and they put those guys in those positions more often than not with, a few curveballs here and there, like, Chad Bougier has definitely evolved as a very versatile weapon, normally a D-side player for the past couple of years, but they've thrown him up the center, and we've seen him on the snake side. He's been all over, but they have a versatile team, but they, as you know, well know, teams can be versatile, but you kind of lock guys into roles a little bit. And that had been an issue for the Ironmen, though, but they're slowly starting to figure that out. Brandon Cornell is on the D side pretty much predominantly now, and they have their snake line set, so I think that's going to be interesting come World Cup. They're in, a pretty tough bracket, though. Again, it's Art Chaos, Red Legion, Ironman, Heat, and X Factor all in the same bracket, kind of reminiscent of that bracket of death that we saw at the last event, too. So, but, I love watching the Ironman play. It's a great story, one of the longest-running teams in existence, and has dominated through different areas of the game. Very interesting story. If you're not familiar with it, you should definitely check it out online. But, come World Cup, man, who knows? Maybe this will, are they going to step up? Are they going to fall down? Are they going to continue these, middle of the road, mid-level boss performances? We will find out. And they went 2-2 at the last event. They lost Art Chaos and Impact, and then they beat 187 Crew, and they beat Dynasty 7-5.
And they almost had Art Chaos.
And they almost had Art
Chaos on the ropes.
They keep doing that, though. They keep going on points and losing it. But anyway, so still a team to watch in the future. If they can keep that roster together for 2015, look out for the Los Angeles Ironmen, because they still are very, very hungry, and they want to get back to that upper echelon and want to be considered one of the best teams in paintball again. So moving on to the 5th-ranked team. This is a team that, Todd, you're very familiar with. It's Omaha Vicious. Omaha Vicious started out the year awesome. You guys took 2nd out the gate, and that was a very interesting story because you guys got beat up in practice playing some really good teams. But then you came in, stunned everybody, other than some insiders, and you guys took 2nd, proved to the league, hey, we're legit this year, and we've come to try to win tournaments. But then since then, hasn't quite been the year. 7th at MAO that you wanted to have, 7th in Chicago, and fighting those relegation games, and then 6th, safe, but safe for World Cup, but not where you guys wanted to be.
Yeah, it's honestly been a pretty frustrating year for us. We prepared so hard for Dallas. We went out, played Damage, kick off the year. We played Ironmen a couple times, came out to California, practiced, and then we went down to Oklahoma City and played against Texas Storm. We had a lot of preparation for Dallas, and then we came in and took 2nd. And it was like, okay, this is the year that we're really gonna, push ourselves. And then we go to MAO. We only ended up getting 1 weekend of practice against Aftershock. Flew out to Chicago, got a chance to play against them, and honestly thought that we played decent. It was a matter of adjusting to the field, mid-event because of the way how slow it was, the swamp side, it was kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
We lost a couple 1-point games, and we very easily, that last game with the prelims we played against X Factor, another 1-point game. It was one of those situations where it's like you win, you play on Sunday, you lose, you play for relegation.
Yeah.
So,
which
MAO,
a lot of teams find themselves in now. But that's why those Saturday afternoon games are so crazy to watch.
Exactly. And we felt like we could have played on Sunday in MAO. It would have been a great tournament for us. Chicago, again, another lack of preparation. We didn't get to play a single team before we went to practice. We just did a bunch of drills, and there's a lot of adjustments we had to make between Friday and Saturday. You know, and it was tough because you don't get to get looks. You know, we have 8 guys on our roster, so we're playing 4-on-4s and, you know, picking up random people and trying to play, you know, games and see what's working, what's not, you know. And like, you got other teams that are traveling 3 weekends to go practice other pro teams, and, you know, it's just a level of preparation. You know, if this isn't a testament to the level of preparation that you need in this league, because I feel like Vicious this year, I mean, we're a top 5 team. We could be a top 3 team very, very easily. You know, with a different finish.
Well, you were. I mean, you're a top 2 team in Dallas.
Exactly.
And that, you know,
and then we talk about West Coast Open again. We practiced 2 days before the event. You know, because the team ended up going to. We played in the CXBL this year, and you know, we're up 2 points on damage the last game of the prelims with 4 minutes left, and we end up throwing that game away. You know, we win that game. We're playing on Sunday. You know, we lose that game. We don't play for relegation, and now, you know, the Ironmen are, you know, 10 points ahead of us in the standings, and they're sitting in 4th, and we're sitting in 5th over here.
And that was why the Ironmen were so angry, because when they saw Dynasty fall, and they were like, God, if we could do well, we could have done better at that tournament. We could have been in contention for that series title.
It's all about preparation. You know, I'm sitting here last weekend. It's a month and a half, you know, almost before World Cup, and you know, you see some teams are out on vacation, out hanging out, screwing around. You know, other teams are out doing, you know, whatever. You look at the teams that are out preparing for World Cup right now, those are the teams that you're going to see on Sunday at World Cup in the Pro Division. You know, the guys that want it more than anything, the guys that are going out and putting in the work, getting their gym time in, getting their cardio up, because it's going to be hot and humid in Florida like it always is. You know, we're in an off year for good weather at the PSP events, it seems like.
And we haven't had a scorcher, you know, yet, so we're due for one of those for sure.
You know,
we definitely have got
West Coast
rain
Open
events.
was actually really nice.
Yeah, it was nice. It was a
nice.
scorcher too, but it was that dry heat. Florida, when it gets to be 100 degrees, that's going to take the energy out of you for sure. But yeah, no,
I mean, it's all about preparation. Yeah. You know, it's all about preparation. It's all about preparation, mentality, you know, being ready for the challenge and being willing to accept that challenge.
So we got ourselves a crazy event coming at you, man, and it'll be honest, before we know it, October again, 9th through the 12th, as the PSP World Cup, biggest event of the year, will be coming very soon. And you know, before we sign off real quick, the top 5 players, I think you're going to be a little proud of your boy Matt Sossman, 3rd overall now through 4 events, and Zach Sherman, 45th overall, Trevor Reeser, 49th, Alexander Borromeo, and Nate Schrader both up there as well too. So yeah, man, it's going to be a crazy event. Those are the top 5 teams heading in to the World Cup. And we'll do 6 through 10 on the next breakdown. So thank you guys for tuning in. See you next time. There are massive opportunities, both with the sport of paintball and for your business. If we are successful in taking our sport to another level, unite with Paintball Access in our quest to elevate paintball and broadcast it to the world. There are advertising packages available for any size business. Join us. Advertise with PBA and help us change the sport for the better forever.